Hello guys, welcome to part 3 of how to create a snake game in C# today. We are going to be working on our snake class, so let's go to our Solution Explorer and add a snake class. This class is going to be a little more complicated, but not much. The namespaces we will need is system.link, system.drawing, and system.collections.generic. Now our public class snake is going to have a few more functions. The variables we will need are public rectangle array, because there are many rectangles in the snake body, and also our x and y are going to be equal to 0 at first. Width and height are going to be 10 pixels all the time. Now the reason we're setting the x and y to 0 at first is because every time we start a new game, we want the first part of the snake to start in this top left-hand corner. So for our constructor, we don't need any parameters, and the functions that will be in this class are a draw function with no parameters, a draw function with graphic parameters, graphics as a parameter. We are going to have a move function with an integer that will specify the direction of which it is going to move, and then finally we are going to have a function that will make the snake grow by 1, and that will take no parameters. So for the grow function, we are going to, because it's not hard, but it's easier to add something to a list of rectangles than it is to add to an array of rectangles. So we're going to make a rectangle list, and we're going to call it temp, and then we're going to set it equal to body.toList, and the toList function comes from the system.link namespace, whereas the list class comes from the collections.generic namespace. Now we're going to say temp.add because it's a list, new rectangle, and then for the new rectangle we have to specify x, y, width, and height, and we're going to say body, and then the index is the body.length minus 1 x coordinate. I'll explain this in a second. And then the width and height are always going to be 10, like I said before. And then finally we're going to set our body equal to temp.toArray. Now the reason the x and y coordinate is these little chunks of code is because if you imagine a series of rectangles and then imagine hitting a piece of food, the entire series of rectangles is going to shift in one direction, and then it's going to grow by 1. So we're going to take the length of it and we are going to add 1 to the end. It's not easy for me to explain. Maybe somebody else could explain it in the comments better, or I'm sure when you code this out yourself that you will understand and perhaps not be able to put it into words. But anyways, this is how it's going to be, and this is how it's going to work. Now for the move function, we are going to first draw our snake, and then we're going to use a switch statement, which is essentially like an if, else if, except it's cleaner in my opinion. Now there's going to be 4 cases, because there are 4 directions that it can move, and that's right, down, left, and up. And the numbers that correspond with the directions are as such. 0 is going to be equal to right, 1 is going to be equal to down, 2 is going to be equal to left, and 3 is going to be equal to up. So if we want to move him to the right once, we are going to set the x coordinate, increase it by 10 pixels. If we want to move it down, we're going to set the the y coordinate, increase 10 pixels. If we want to move it left, we are going to set the x coordinate, subtract 10 pixels. And then if we want to move up, we are going to set the y coordinates to subtract 10 pixels. Now for the 2 draw functions, for this one it's fairly simple. It's just graphic.fill rectangles, and then we can set it to any color. I'm going to set it to green because because our traditional snake is green in my mind. And then our rectangle array, which is our bodies. And then for this draw function, we're going to use something a little interesting and a little confusing. Body.length minus 1, I less than 0, I minus minus, and then we're going to say body I is equal to body I minus 1. Now this is also a little piece of code that I have trouble putting into words, but I understand why it works. So also something that somebody else might be able to explain better than I am not explaining right now. So for the constructor, all we have to do is create a new instance of our rectangle array, and it's going to have one rectangle, and that's going to be the head. And then we have to create a new instance of that particular rectangle, and we're going to set our XY width and height. And that is our snake class. Our snake class is complete. Thank you guys for joining me for part 3 of how to create a snake game in C#. For part 4, we are going to finish up the game, and this will be the longest part, and that will be the code for all the gaming function and design. Thank you guys.